Hello! I'm George Washington, the first President of the United States of America. I'm someone you should get to know. I was born here in Westmoreland County, Virginia in 1732. I died here in Mount Vernon, Virginia in 1799. So I lived to be 67 years old. Here's a picture of what I looked like. A lot of pictures of me make me look kind of serious or grumpy. That's because my teeth weren't in very good shape. I held my mouth closed tightly so nobody had to look at them. I also wore a wig, which might make me look a little unusual to you these days, but back then it was the style. Everyone was wearing them.
This is nice, but do you have anything with a green bow in the back?
Even though I looked kind of grumpy in my portraits, actually, I was a pretty friendly sort of person. On certain days, I invited anyone who was passing by my house to stop in and chat. As long as they dressed nicely. Stop by again.
So, do you think he'll let us in?
Why not? We're wearing our best suits.
I also loved parties and barbecues. I liked to dance and tell jokes.
George, everyone wants to know how long the bratwurst will be.
Tell them they'll be about 5 or 6 inches long. That's a good one. I was born on my father's tobacco farm in Virginia. My father had lots of land. We were pretty wealthy. Our farm was in Virginia, which was one of the 13 colonies that made up what would later become the United States of America. At that time, all of the colonies were owned by England, and they were ruled by the King of England.
That's me. I am King George III, King of all England and the 13 colonies. And everyone born in the colonies is an English citizen, including George Washington.
When I was very young, I learned to ride a horse and hunt. There were lots of places for me to explore. In the 1700s, Virginia was mainly forests and wilderness. I was a good student in school. When I was 16, I decided to become a surveyor. A surveyor measures land for landowners so they know exactly what they own. I made drawings to chart out boundaries and made maps like this one. People paid me quite a lot of money for doing this. I spent a lot of time surveying outdoors in the wilderness. I learned things that would later help me become a good leader. I slept outdoors, hunted, and got to know the American Indians who lived there.
Hi, George.
Hi, fellas. It was quite a change from my life back home.
Young George seems to have made some unusual friends since he became a surveyor.
When I was 21, I decided I would like to be a soldier in Virginia's army. Even though I didn't know anything about being a soldier, the governor of Virginia gave me a chance. Governor Dinwiddie, I'd like to be a soldier in Virginia's army.
Do you know anything about being a soldier?
Nope, not a thing.
Welcome to the army.
This was the beginning of my great career. During this time, French people and American Indians were starting to build forts in the Ohio Valley. This made the English angry. They felt the land in the Ohio Valley belonged to them.
I'm angry. That land belongs to England, and someone has got to go and tell those unfriendly Indians, those mean French guys, to get out of the Ohio Valley.
Men, I need someone to go tell unfriendly Indians and mean French guys to get out of the Ohio Valley.
Anyway, come on, get rid of them. What do they want from us? Come on.
By the way, they have guns and they don't like us.
I was the only one brave enough to volunteer. I'll go, Governor Dinwiddie. The governor sent me on this dangerous mission, but things didn't work out very well. The King of England would like you to get out of the Ohio Valley. Well, what do you say?
Get lost! This is our
When the governor found out what had happened, he sent me back to the Ohio Valley.
George, I want you to go back to the Ohio Valley, and this time take a whole bunch of soldiers with you and try again.
Yes, sir, Governor Dinwiddie. On the way back to the Ohio Valley, my men and I launched a surprise attack against a fort occupied by the French and Indians. This turned out to be the beginning of the French and Indian War. It took a long time to straighten out, but we finally won the French and Indian War for England, and I was able to show what a good leader I was. After the war, I went back to Virginia to take care of my family's farm. I was elected to help run Virginia and married a woman named Martha Custis. Martha already had 2 children from an earlier marriage. I had plenty of things to keep me busy. By the late 1700s, people in the colonies were getting pretty fed up with the way the King of England was running things. He told the colonists to give him lots of money. This was known as taxation. He told the colonists that they had to take English soldiers into their homes, feed them, and give them a place to sleep. He told people that they could only buy things that come from England. He did a lot of things that weren't very nice.
I did a lot of things that weren't very nice. It's fun to be king.
The King of England and the English government had been treating the colonists badly for a long time. Finally, in 1775, people became so angry they decided to do something about it. The men and women of the 13 colonies started fighting the English. They wanted their freedom. This was the beginning of the Revolutionary War. I, too, was angry about the way the English were treating the colonies, and the people knew that I was brave and a good leader. So I was asked if I would head up the colony's army. So on June 15th, 1775, I agreed to become the commander of all the 13 colonies fighting against England. Heading up a new army was very difficult. Many colonists wanted to help fight the English, but most of these people knew nothing about being a soldier.
We want to join your army. Ned over there is good with a pea shooter, and the rest of the boys can fling mud balls like you never saw.
This is going to be harder than I thought. I worked hard with the men, and I found I was able to turn them into pretty good soldiers. The Revolutionary War lasted about 8 years. Most of the time, the powerful British Army seemed to be winning. At a certain point, after losing a few battles, I knew I would have to win one pretty soon, or my men might give up. I decided to take a chance. On Christmas Day in 1776, I gathered my men onto boats, crossed the icy Delaware River, and headed for the town of Trenton, New Jersey, for a surprise attack.
Are you sure we'll surprise the enemy by attacking on Christmas Day, General Washington?
Yes, especially when they find out we didn't bring any presents. Trenton was being guarded by about 1,000 Hessian soldiers. Hessian soldiers were German soldiers hired by England to help fight the colonists. The Hessians were completely surprised and gave up right away. They didn't expect anyone to attack them on Christmas.
It is George Washington. He wants us to give up. Ask him if we can keep our presents.
Well, he's not getting my teddy bear.
After winning the Battle of Trenton, the war against England continued. It was very difficult. The winter of 1777 was one of the harshest winters ever. My army and I spent this winter in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, without enough food, clothing, or shelter. Some of the soldiers didn't even have shoes or boots. Those of us who made it through the winter never gave up, though. And after this winter was over, my army was more determined and better than ever. Then something happened that really helped us out. The country of France decided to help me fight the English. The French didn't like England very much during that time and wanted the colonists to win the war. In October 1781, with the help of French soldiers and warships, my army trapped the British Army in Yorktown, Virginia, and made them give up. The war was over, and the United States of America was officially a new country. I was ready to go home to Martha and take some time off to relax. At least I thought I was.
George, dear, I'm afraid you'll have to forget about your nap today.
What? It seems the American people had something else in mind for me to do.
We need a new leader.
We need someone who's brave.
Someone smart.
Well-liked.
Don't forget handsome. We need a leader that we can trust.
We want George Washington to be our first president.
The American people wanted me to be their first president. Not only was I the best man for the job, but I looked like a good leader. I was 6 feet 2 inches tall and handsome. After the Revolutionary War ended, some of my closest friends tried to convince me to be king of the United States. I turned down the chance to be king. No, thank you. Actually, I hated the idea. I had just fought a long, hard war to free the colonies from the rule of a king, King George III. They didn't need another king. What the United States needed was a leader who could be elected by the people and be in charge for only a limited time. That was the type of leader I was willing to be. This is one of the reasons that people trusted me so much. So, in 1789, I was elected the first president of the United States of America. I promised to protect the rights of the American people. I also promised to follow the rules of the U.S. Constitution, which was a kind of guide written to help start up the new country. As the first president, I worked hard to set things up. I organized a place to make money called a mint. I then helped start up banks and the U.S. Post Office. I was really surprised to see that some of my advisors and other members of the government began to argue and disagree a lot. Many of them had different ideas about how to run the new country. I tried as hard as I could to convince everyone to work together to keep the new government from falling apart. Once, when a bunch of angry farmers refused to pay taxes on the whiskey they made, as president, I sent U.S. soldiers to convince them to change their minds. This event was called the Whiskey Rebellion. It was an important test that showed that the new government had the power to enforce its laws. I worked very hard to make sure that the United States got off to a good start. I was a brave general. Without me, the 13 colonies might not have won their freedom from England. That's why I was called the father of the country. I'm remembered as one of the greatest Americans ever. I'm remembered on lots of things that we can see today. My picture is on the $1 bill. In Washington, D.C., there's a big monument with my name on it. And in South Dakota, my face is carved 60 feet high in the side of Mount Rushmore, along with other famous presidents that you could get to know. I hope you enjoyed getting to know me, George Washington, the first president of the United States of America. Goodbye.
learned a whole lot. Yep, me too.